As you saw in the media invite, we're raising awareness about child sexual abuse. This is also the beginning of Child Abuse Awareness Month, but we're focusing solely right now on child sexual abuse. As someone who's been with the department for the last 17 years, I had no idea myself how prevalent child sexual abuse was in our community. And to be clear, I'm talking about all kinds of sexual abuse against children. We're talking about adults touching children inappropriately, and we're talking about adults having actual intercourse with children, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old children. So this week is about bringing awareness to that topic. And I understand that this is something that people don't want to talk about. It's completely natural not to want to talk about this. It's a human reaction. But it's something that we need to talk about. And I think that we as a department, we as a community owe it to the children to protect them from this kind of stuff. At this time where our country, our communities, just people in general are so divided on everything, I feel like 99% of us can agree that adults should not be having sex with children. Adults should not be touching children inappropriately. Our national statistics say that 30%, only 30% of child sexual assaults are reported. So to put that in perspective, if we have 100 sexual assaults on children, we only know about 30 of them. You have a room, an auditorium full of 100 kids. We can help or get justice for 30 of them. 70 of those children are left in the dark to fight alone. So a number you're going to hear a lot this week is that in 90% of our cases, the offender is known to the victim. It's not the typical white van thing or the stranger danger type of issues. It's someone that is known and trusted by the family. Known, it could be teachers, coaches, cousins, uncles, parents. It could be anything. But again, known to the victim. As you'll see here on these posters that the PIO put out, about 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys will experience sexual abuse during their childhood. So each day this week, we're going to address separate issues with the overall goal of increasing reporting, increasing awareness, and we want to also increase funding for our nonprofits that help us so greatly in the community. And we'll be providing ways in which individuals, corporations can donate to those causes and help out the community. Monday, as you may have seen, was kind of an introduction to crimes against children, some brief statistics. Again, the 90% figure was mentioned then. Tuesday, we touched on some myths versus realities. Today, we'll be looking at some signs and symptoms of child sexual abuse. In addition to signs and symptoms that are seen in the children, we're going to look at signs and symptoms of adults that are grooming children that we can be on the lookout for. Thursday, you're going to hear from our DA's office, and they're going to be talking about prosecution, sentencing, statutes of limitations on child sexual abuse, and topics like that. And then on Friday, that day is going to be dedicated to one of our community partners named Pat's Place, the Crimes Against Children Advocacy Center, and what they do for our community and the survivors of child sexual abuse. So with that, I want to bring up one of our most veteran detectives, an absolute expert in his field, been on the unit for 7 years and knows more about any of this stuff than I ever will. So here he is.
Your first name and last name and spelling one more time before you
Mine?
answer. Yes, sir.
Sergeant Andrew Greenlees, Greenlees.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Jones, and I am a detective in the Crimes Against Children unit. I've been a detective in the unit for 7 years, and throughout my time in the unit, I have firsthand seen the resilience survivors of sexual abuse show on a daily basis. That resilience that they show begins well before a police report is ever filed and can show up in ways that get overlooked as, oh, it's just a child being a child. Such signs that you can look for that may be indicators of potential abuse in a child include a child that self-harms, Oftentimes, they self-harm as a way to disassociate from the trauma that they've endured. A child can change in behavior, oftentimes come across as scared, anxious, depressed, or withdrawn. A child can return to early childhood behaviors such as thumb sucking, bedwetting, fear of the dark, and strangers. A child can fear going home, fear going to a family member's house, fear of going to a friend's house, like Sergeant Greenlee said, where an abused baby was residing. A child may have changes in eating. Due to fear and anxiety, abuse may cause a child to gain or lose weight. Changes in sleeping patterns, frequent nightmares, waking up during the night, and negative changes in school performance as well as attendance. Children that have experienced abuse can also result or revert to risk-taking behaviors such as drug use, alcohol use. Oftentimes, an offender's number one goal is to gain the trust of not only the child, but that child's family, that child's parents. Offenders are very skilled at projecting an image as responsible and caring, and over time, this allows the offender to gain direct access to the child by the parents putting their guard down, lowering their guard, and this is known as grooming. They achieve this through methods that include discouraging other adults from being around and being involved with that child, preferring the company of the child to adults, creating opportunities to be alone with the child outside of their designated role. For example, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, someone that is in a community position of trust that makes it a point to act like they are doing extra with the child to make that child better at, in school, in their sport. Oftentimes they use excessive physical touching unprompted with the child, hugging, kissing, tickling, and wrestling. Offenders oftentimes will try and desensitize a child from physical touch, and that physical touch will progress over time to the point where the offender and the child, or the offender gets to a comfortable point of committing the acts. The offender shows interest in the child that feels too good to be true. If you as a parent get that hair sticking up on the back of your neck that says, hey, this person is very much involved, a little too much in my child's life, that could be a sign of potential grooming. An offender can often favor one sibling over another, and often ways they do that is providing them with gifts, treats, giving them money, things that they give that child where they don't give the sibling. And then when an offender is confronted by another family member, by a parent, oftentimes the offender will minimize what their acts are and what they're doing in their interaction with the child. We are all mandatory reporters, and if you suspect a child is being sexually abused or a child comes to you and discloses that they're being sexually abused, you are obligated to report it. You are that child's voice, and reporting can be done through calling 911 or calling the Department of Social Services. Through our investigations, ultimately, the most important thing that we prioritize is keeping the child at the forefront of everything we do. The healing process doesn't end when an arrest is made. In collaboration with our community partners, we instill a victim-centered, trauma-informed approach that ensures the child is never re-traumatized by having to speak about their lived experience more than once. One such partner that we work with hand in hand to accomplish this is Pat's Place Child Advocacy Center. And with that, I will send it over to Andrew Oliver with Pat's Place.
Thank you, Detective Jones. My name is Andrew Oliver. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Pat's Place Child Advocacy Center. Pat's Place is Charlotte's Children's Advocacy Center. It is a safe place that coordinates the investigation and treatment of the most serious cases of child abuse in our community. We're talking about child sexual abuse, kids who've experienced serious physical abuse or have witnessed violence and homicide, life-threatening neglect, kids who have been trafficked and sold for sex. All the services that a child needs when they've experienced one of the most difficult situations of their life can be provided at Pat's Place, from the forensic interview to advocacy support to medical care and emotional healing through counseling, so that they can recover their lives and move forward. In addition to those direct services, we offer other prevention and intervention services, including training and educating thousands of adults in our community how to recognize and respond to abuse appropriately and how to prevent it from happening. In addition, we also coordinate our community's response to minor victims of human trafficking. Last year, we saw 1,307 children at Charlotte's Children's Advocacy Center. The average age of the kids we see is 9 years old. For children, most of the children that are referred to us, their journey to healing starts with a forensic interview. We're talking about a developmentally sensitive, non-leading conversation that's designed to elicit accurate details of what children have experienced using their own words. They're referred by our partners in law enforcement and social services who are with us on site and observing that interview as it's conducted in real time. This team approach ensures that children are only interviewed one time and they don't have to relive the trauma that they've experienced. While that interview is happening, we're providing advocacy support to their caregivers, helping them navigate next steps, because all too often the person that did this is also providing and putting a roof over their head or providing food and putting food on the table. We call this our multidisciplinary approach, bringing together all the partners that are involved in the investigation of these cases, where we collaborate from the outset. We share information, we coordinate our response, and we make decisions that are in the best interest of the child. We celebrate our 20th anniversary in Charlotte this year, and we've seen incredible success for the children that we've seen and the partnerships that we've formed. We know that kids in this area are now 4 times more likely to get all the services that they need, and our prosecution rates for child sexual abuse have increased in this community from 5% to more than 90% today for cases that are charged. I want to commend CMPD and their leadership for spearheading this campaign and bringing this issue to light. Sexual abuse is a crime that thrives in secrecy. Our job is to make this topic as comfortable to talk about as other bad things that happen to children, like bullying and cancer and violence. Our job is to encourage adults to lean into their vulnerability and to get comfortable talking about safe and unsafe touches with their children, reminding them about boundaries and taking that opportunity to educate them. And our job is to remind the community that there is a response that works for children locally, that wherever they are in that healing journey, there is a team of professionals who are committed and dedicated to working with them and to finding justice and seeking the healing that they deserve. Next up, I'd like to introduce one of our outstanding partners, Leslie Stevens, who is the Assistant District Attorney with Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leslie Stevens, and I am the Special Victims Team Leader at the Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office. In my role, I am proud that I lead a team of very dedicated Assistant District Attorneys who are charged with the responsibility of prosecuting child sexual abuse. I would first like to thank the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department for allowing us to stand with them today and raising awareness in our fight against child sexual abuse. We are often asked at the District Attorney's Office, what is the profile of a child abuser? And it's been mentioned this morning already, but it is worth repeating. The people that commit these crimes against our children are largely not strangers to our children. The vast majority of the people that commit these crimes are people that we know, people that we trust, people that we sometimes even love, people that we allow into our homes, and people that we allow into the lives of our children because we trust them. The stark reality is that these crimes are not being committed by strangers off the street, but they are being committed by our family members, those that have a parental role over our children in the home, our coaches, our teachers, our spiritual leaders. Child abusers work very hard to gain the trust first of the community and the parents and the family of the child, and then the child themselves. When a child sees that all of the adults that love them and care for them trust this person, then they believe they should trust this person too, and they let down their defenses. And that is when they are abused and preyed upon. All along the way, this person who has ingratiated themselves with the family is seen as a kind and caring person to this child. And the child knows that if they tell what is happening to them, they may not be believed. So many of our cases at the district attorney's office that we prosecute begin first with the child signaling or telling so many different times that something is happening to them before an adult is convinced to alert the authorities. All too often, children with behavioral problems or issues are doubted or completely not believed altogether. The professionals that work in this field know and understand that children with behavioral issues are often specifically targeted by child abusers. For that reason, knowing that if they do tell what is happening to them, they are frequently not going to be believed. When that happens, a child is silenced and the abuser continues their crimes in plain sight. That is why it is important for every resident to remember that we, under North Carolina law, are all mandatory reporters. Every last one of us has a legal obligation to report to authorities when we suspect child abuse is occurring. Failure to do so is a criminal offense. Under North Carolina law, the sentencing for child abuse crimes can vary. Some of our child abuse crimes appropriately carry hefty mandatory active prison sentences of a minimum of 25 years. Others are punished at a level that you may not expect. For instance, the crime of taking indecent liberties with a child. That is a crime that is very commonly charged in these cases and specifically involves an individual engaging in sexually victimizing behavior with a child. However, under our current law, that crime may be sentenced with a probationary term. That is a scary proposition for the children in our community. And we at the Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office certainly hope that our state policymakers will consider offering more protections to these child victims in the future. Finally, if you yourself are a child sexual abuse survivor, it's never too late to come forward. It's never too late to say what has happened to you. No matter if it happened years or decades before, there is no statute of limitations in North Carolina for felony child sexual abuse crimes. Last year, the District Attorney's Office was able to secure a conviction for a man by the name of Dennis Pegues. Mr. Pegues sexually assaulted 2 young people in Charlotte many years before. His crimes did not come to light to the authorities until well after a decade after they had occurred. And yet a jury found him guilty, and he is now in prison for a minimum of 68 years. With sufficient evidence and strong collaboration with our law enforcement partners and our community partners, your district attorney's office promises that we would do everything we can to hold offenders accountable and to prevent further harm to our community's children. Thank you.
So with that, I'm happy to take any questions from the media. If someone is better suited to take the question, I'll pass it off to them. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jesse, WCMC. 2 questions. What are the current trends as far as seeing more cases in Charlotte in general? And then 2, I know the number Andrew mentioned from 5 to 90%. Was there something that changed that led to such an increase in prosecution and so forth?
So as far as current case trends, it stays pretty pretty fluid because they're just so underreported. So it just stays underreported. Our caseload is typically between 700 and 800 cases a year, but it's in that same range all the time. As far as the 5 to 90% change.
Happy to talk about that. So we've seen an increase in cases that are charged having successful prosecutorial outcomes because the evidence that we're getting through these forensic interviews is such that it allows for that to continue. The child's making just one statement. They're not telling 7 different people what happened and getting different information. So we're solidifying that statement early on from the children, getting the most accurate details.
When you say 5% to 90, when is the 5% from, and do you mean the county or?
Yeah, Mecklenburg County prior to 2005, before we opened our doors.
And the 90 is from?
Current today.
Yes, ma'am.
As summer's starting and kids are out more doing sports and things, talk a little bit about what some red flags, and not only sports, there's like other events that occur, you know, there's photography with sports, also fashion shows, TV. Parents want to get their kids involved in things, but how do you safely do that and know that, you know, the person's been vetted and is not someone that could take an
Sure.
opportunity?
And summer is a big deal for us because children aren't in school. So we typically do see a big decrease in reporting during the summer because the children have nobody to disclose to. It's very often that children disclose to a teacher or a counselor, someone at school that they trust, a friend who then goes to a teacher. As far as red flags and stuff, Detective Jones went through those grooming behaviors, and again, we're going to put those out again today as far as the things that parents should look for in those trusted positions, the teachers, the photographers, the coaches. You're going to get a good picture of exactly what is involved in those grooming behaviors, and it's some of the things he touched on as well.
I had another
Yes.
question. A lot of time you'll hear kids say, well, I don't want to say anything, because you're going to turn around and tell my parents who could be the person, the abuser. So how do you bridge that connection that makes them comfortable? So if they are confiding, you know, because a lot of times they might be scared to confide.
Detective Jones, you want to speak to that?
So we do see that a lot of times kids, you know, they don't want to tell parents, they don't want to tell teachers because they're in fear that they're going to get the offender in trouble. One of the things that we rely on is a lot of times kids talk to kids, they talk to each other. And when that happens, kids will then in turn, those kids will tell their parents, those parents will then report to us, report to DSS, report to the schools. And so a lot of times we don't get, it may not be a direct disclosure from a child to a teacher. It can be the child tells a kid, that kid goes tells their parents, or technology today is a huge barrier that we deal with. And parents, when they're checking their kids' phones, might see their child's talking to another child who is disclosing through text messages, through social media apps, that they were a victim of sexual abuse. And then we get alerted, or DSS gets alerted, and we get involved from that point.
What's a hotline or some numbers parents or teachers or family members, neighbors could call if they suspect and want to give information?
Yeah, I would encourage parents, if a child comes to you, whether they disclose themselves of being sexually abused or they find out their child's friends being sexually abused, call 911, call DSS. And then that way we're going to get alerted and we jointly respond, and then we can address at that point the next steps to take with the investigation.
Anyone else have a question?
So again, that's all we have for today. If you have any questions after, feel free to stick around and we can talk about it, but also be on the lookout for all of our social media outlets this week to continue the campaign. And I appreciate you guys coming. Thank you.
these out shortly. Does anybody need any name spelling?
Yeah, that's always helpful.
Okay, so we have Sergeant Greenleaf,
EES.
Greenlees. Detective Jones, common spelling. And then, would you mind giving them the